Good afternoon. Welcome back to another rendition of the B&H virtual event space. You're here for another Leica conversation. Stefan Vanasco joining us today. Stefan, what's going on, man?
Not too much, just out here in LA, enjoying the warmth, unlike you guys, from what
Man,
I'm
you,
hearing.
you had to throw it in. He's throwing daggers right away. It's like we get one day of warm weather out here, and then you come out the next day in shorts, and everyone's looking at you like you're crazy because it's back to being 30 degrees.
Yeah, it's what's that infamous like George Costanza meme where it's like, 50 degrees in New York and he's like in like the shorts and like a t-shirt type of thing or something. And then for LA, when it's like 50 degrees in LA, it's like bubble goose and Gore-Tex.
Is it true out there? I know it's true out here.
Yeah, because out here it's like it's just the same season all the time, which is like spring, summer. So anytime the weather drops below 75, it's like everyone wants to find an excuse to wear that sweater, wear that jacket, wear whatever, winter wear that they got. Like, oh, I'm gonna break it out now because like I can do it today.
Totally. Well, I was gonna ask you, like, I was gonna start on like a really like, let's get this thing started, bring the bare knuckle brawl out, New York or LA, but I'm sure you're not gonna say New York, and if you did, you couldn't walk on the street.
Oh, well, I mean, like realistically, like
Hey,
very conflicting, but it's like I have very good ties to both places. I was born in New York, born in Queens. My father started his own business, so he moved the family out to LA when I was really young. So grew up in LA, but he would always make sure we went back for like summers. So I had family in Queens, family in Long Island. Spent a lot of summers in Bayside, off of like the Springfield Boulevard, off the 495. So I think it was a good balance. And he was just like a very like stereotypical Italian New Yorker. So like he stood out in LA, and I think a lot of that energy and a lot of that outlook he instilled upon like me and my brother, like it's just a thing. Like, and I take a lot of pride in being able to go back to New York. And I'll tell people who've never been to New York, it's like as soon as you land, like if you land in JFK and you get off the plane, you step out onto like the street, that smell and that energy, it's like you can't describe it. That city definitely has its own energy. It has something that like you're just excited, like whether it's the history of it and all these different things. Like I get like a rush when I'm there. I just want to run around all day.
so what's the vibe in LA? I've never been to LA. So me or any photographer stepping foot in LA, what's the vibe that they're going to get when they get off the plane?
That's the beauty of LA. It's so big, or it's big and vast. So like it's gonna feel a little bit overwhelming, but the warm weather, right? Like that's like energizing in its own right. When it comes to photography, it's like it's almost like it's overwhelming. Where do you start? Like, do you start at the beach? Do you go to Venice and Santa Monica, which in its own right is such a great landmark area of Los Angeles? Or okay, do you want to go up into the mountains so you can go up by like Mount Lee, which is where the Hollywood sign is. You can go by Griffith Observatory and hike up there. You can go up the 2 freeway to the Angeles National Forest and go to Mount Wilson. So there's that. Then it's like, oh, I want to do like gritty street stuff. Then it's like, okay, we go down to Hollywood Boulevard, spend time down there, go to K-Town, like off Wilshire, go down to downtown. So it's like, it literally is so many different things. You have like iconic sports arenas. You have these beautiful historic neighborhoods, Boyle Heights, like Mid-City, like all these different, it's so crazy when you really touch base into how big and vast LA is. So as a photographer, it's like, what do you want? You want architecture? You want this? Like it's endless.
A little bit of everything. Well,
yeah.
We knocked the cobwebs off the start. So I do want to pause for a little bit of station identification and thank our sponsor for today's event, Leica. Huge thank you to the team at Leica for bringing Stefan on today. And obviously Stefan for sharing his afternoon with us. And I want to remind all you guys out there, if you are new here and you don't know the drill, get your questions in. We're going to try to get them all answered. So hello to everybody out there on Facebook, live stream, Vimeo. Stefan will do his best to get to all of your questions today. It's not just going to be our input. We want to hear what you guys have to say too. So I kind of want to start there, Stefan, with what you were talking about LA. It has like, every time I look at photographers' work from LA, there's various aspects to it. And when you look at your work and your body of work, you do a lot of different genres. You do them all well, which not a lot of photographers can say that they can spread it out over street, portrait, fashion, aerial. I mean, there's a lot you do. You don't really typecast yourself into one. But a lot of people, that's not an area of success for them. They do one thing well, whereas you do everything I've seen you do it well. Is that something that's natural to who you are? Has that multifaceted, complex LA environment helped with that?
Um, I think personally, again, it's like so vast, and I'll always probably throughout this conversation do these like little analogies and tie backs like skateboarding. You know, skateboarding, photography to me were so similar in the sense you take your skateboard, you go out into the world, you interpret whatever you want, and you can skate anything you want. There's no rules, and that's what you do. Photography, what excited me about it was the similarity in that. You go out with your camera, and it's whatever you want to photograph, whatever you want to make. You know, so those parallels were really intriguing in LA, right? So I think like if you were to ask many people, like, what do you think of LA photography? Just because you had, you know, an amazing photographer like Esteban Oriol do this beautiful documentation of, you know, Hispanic Latino life in LA, whether it was the gangs and all these different, you know, variables from it, people might assume black and white, lowriders, tattooed people, like that's in LA in photographing. For me, it's like photography has shown me to explore the city so much, right? There is so much to it beyond the surface level locations or surface level expected type of people that you want to get. So, and that's the thing for me is like I try to follow inspiration. So if I shoot a subject matter, I can get hyper focused on for like a few weeks or a month, and everything is a body of work you're building and you're working on. So you don't have to say I'm just this one person. Because for me, it's like I need a break from this. What else? Like, oh, I'll try my hand at, you know, going to Echo Park Lake and shooting lotuses or aerial or whatever it is, because I want to be excited what I'm doing. And it's okay to hit the pause button on that body of work, revisit something else, and keep both of them growing or all of them growing. So LA does an amazing job of that. That my goal was really to kind of say like, there's a great representation of lowrider car culture and all the stuff, but there's so much more that LA has that I want to try to showcase that.
I love that. And I think a lot of people resonate with that. You have multiple interests and you don't just lock yourself into one thing, one type of photography, black and white or color. So does that keep you, does that kind of help keep from getting stuck? You know, a lot of people get that creative rut. Do you find yourself getting in a creative rut? When you do, how do you get out?
You can, right? So we all go through it. Like that's an amazing thing. Like I'll have friends who like live in LA, who do photos or not in LA, New York, wherever. Let's just say New York though, because I love that city so much, and I find it so amazing when they're like, "Oh, I'm so over the city." Like I don't want. I'm like, have you really dug into the city? Have you really shot it, or you just like gone to like, you know? So I think the similar thing for LA, and I think photography, when I look at it, is a beautiful art form, right? Like it's endless and boundless. Like you can say, well, I'm good at this, so I'm going to run with this. My personal take is after a while, no matter how much you want to say I'm this type of photographer, you're going to get burnt out, I would imagine, or at least like less enthusiastic about like, you know, making another street photo or making another portraiture or something. Cause it's like, at some point you've proven to yourself, I can do this. I've shown myself, I feel like I'm good at this, or an audience thinks I'm good at this, right? So like, where's the challenge? Where's the next thing? And I think evolution is important. And I think it's like, whether it's Picasso or different people you can look at who had specific bodies of work that they were just like in the zone, like photography can be the same thing. So for me, like when I realized it's like, oh, like I don't have to box myself in and say I'm this one photographer. Like I'm a photographer, not just sports or just concert or just whatever. And I think the fun part is trying your hand at all these different subject matters, right? Because it's like you can learn something new from a different subject matter and then bring it back to your street or bring it back to something else. And now you're meshing and blending different techniques from different things that present something new versus, you know, like we've all been influenced and we all want to like, I want to make a photo like Persona, I want to make a photo like Gilded or, you know, Meyerowitz or, you know, all these great photographers. And it's just kind of like, does the world need to see another kind of redundant take maybe per se, or is it like, are you really trying to push yourself to something new?
I love, because I kind of feel the same way. And one of the greatest things about you is that you're self-taught. And I feel like self-taught artists, photographers, whatever the concentration, you have such a greater appreciation for your own thought, your own vision. You don't grow up having stuff drilled into you like I kind of feel like you lose a sense of authenticity when you're learning too much about other people's process and not enough about your own. Do you agree? Do you think that that's something that you've taken to kind of make your own way? And
Yeah, I do agree, like halfway, because I do think this freedom of like pushing yourself, right? But that kind of falls on the person and how much they want to push themselves to learn and what they want to teach themselves. But I will say this, like over this time of like seeing, free space internet grow, social media interaction between different photographers, it's great, but I still think that element of a teacher, like looking at your work and giving honest critique and an honest judgment and honest push, is missing a bit from that, right? So you can teach yourself all these different things. And again, it's all about how much you're going to look at your own work and really say like, is this great? Is this so-and-so? What can I do better? Without that teacher saying, hey, like, this is what my take is, this is what you're missing. It's up a lot of, can I cuss on here?
you're good.
It messes up a lot of stuff, because if you're in an echo chamber of all your friends high-fiving you, oh, it's a great photograph. Your family members are, oh, it's a great photograph. Like how do you grow when you're like, oh, I'm already great. Like whatever I do is great. Everyone loves it. Like no one's going to tell me so I think the openness, again, like skateboarding, of just going out and teaching yourself is great, but it is good to have a mentor or a teacher or someone who can just honestly push you. And, that's what skateboarding was to me as a teenager. We had the older group of kids that would tell us, what you're doing is like, you're acting up. Don't do that. That's stupid. Like, they schooled us in so many different ways that left an impact on me. And I think that's what's missing from a lot of photography today for younger contemporary photographers, is like someone just honestly critiquing them because their skin isn't quite developed for it, right? You give a judgment, it's like, oh, you're just hating on me. It's like, is someone hating, or are they just really trying to help you?
Yeah, right. Like there's not enough people that are opening up their work for critique, for criticism. I mean, it's a culture where it's like, if somebody doesn't have enough likes on a picture, it's like, all right, I'll just take it down. And I think you should face.
But even that, like, what I try to remind people, and this is what the numbers on social media has done to us, right? Oh, it only got 100 likes. And I'd say, like, if you had a photo hanging up in a gallery and you saw 100 people stopping together to look at your photo, you're going to tell me that's not enough people? 100 people is not enough? Like, that's a lot of bodies. And especially if it's a photograph that you feel connected to, that you truly made for yourself and not for an aesthetic or not for an audience, like, that's a beautiful thing. Because it's all about, like, what I learned over the years is the importance of quality over quantity. That if you have a core audience that sees what you're doing and likes what you're doing and is willing to follow you for you being yourself, that's way better than the audience that says, well, I liked this one photo you made, make that again, right? Because they're just there for the one thing. And that's the beauty, like I'll say straight up, with Leica camera as a company and their heritage and what they've done, that I love and respected, right? Because like we're going to make a digital camera with no screen. We're going to make black and white. They're going to do all these things that you will never see any of the competitors think to do, because that's not in the realm, right? Like, but Leica looks at who they are and what they're doing, and they're like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And the audience that loves Leica cameras, from the design to the quality to everything, it's like they get it. And I really respect that, as a big global brand as they are, to like, we're just going to do this because our market share, or people that ride with us, they want this, so I think it's really cool to see that.
What originally brought you to Leica cameras?
I think it was just like, anyone who really starts delving into photography and starts like learning about it, like the mystique of Leica is inescapable. So one, it's like you go to a camera store, and if they sell Leica products, you're like, what are these cameras? They look very interesting, right? Their design is very minimal and clean and different, right? Then there's the flip side, that if you start getting into the art historic side of things, you're gonna like say, like, oh, that great photo was made with a Leica. That one was like, just so on and so on and so on. It's like super intriguing. So like when I had enough money, I went to the Leica boutique at Sammy's Camera out here, and there was an M6 with a 35, and I bought that. And the rangefinder aspect was like so fun, right? And then it's like, this was at the time, like right when the M240 came out. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, I can have this same experience even digitally, like same lenses, like familiar body size. So I found an M240 brand new off Craigslist at the time because like people were hoarding them and, you know, reselling them. So the M6 and then that, and I was just hooked from there. Like I just loved, you know, I was coming from a DSLR with a, you know, when you pack a Leica and multiple lenses compared to a big DSLR, and it's just like, wait, why am I carrying this around when I'm getting the same, you know, I'm getting the same use of lenses, I'm getting better quality images, I felt, but also in a digital age, I love the fact of the manual interpretation. I felt more connected to my photographs I was making digitally because it's me focusing, it's me setting everything. If I missed a shot, I can't blame the autofocus, it's me. So whenever I did hit a photo and it did work out, I felt like a hunter, I felt like a fisherman, like this is great. Like the user experience really pulled me in more and more.
And it sounds like you like that, the feeling behind an image and not so caught up on like I feel like people pixel peak now and everybody just wants to zoom an image in and talk about sharpness and this and that. And I love the approach of photographers, you know, and I've seen in some of your work and some of your interviews you've done where you're very focused in on, well, is there emotion behind the image? Is there feeling behind the image? What does the image say? And it's less about the technical aspect. And I feel like that kind of plays in, especially when you're working with a Leica system that's a manual focus. It allows you to be in the moment, right?
It does. And I think I'll say to like that point you made is it's really interesting, right? So I think as people, we've been kind of fed that anything digital is perfect. You know, music digital is supposed to be crisp and clear. Movies that we watch digitally are supposed to look vibrant and everything. And I think with photography, that extension has went in there as well. So I think for a while, a messy, sloppy, noisy digital photograph just seemed disgusting to a lot of people versus like, if it was the same image on film, something about the analog texture like tells us it's okay. So I think the pixel peeping, and that's just like for tech people, I think you just, you know, if you make a photo digitally, there's like high ISO noise or there's something like that's fine. Like give your photo something more than just the digital output that you can get instantaneously, right? So what I love about, again, going back to the Leica is like their heritage of lenses. You can find like older lenses that maybe have like an interesting rendering to them or look to them. You know, you can throw them on your M or even on the SL2, the SL2S system. And now through this like heritage item from Leica, you're embedding a feeling into your digital photograph now. So that's like an exciting part of using their gear as well, that you can either have like a very modern kind of like contrasty, crisp digital image. You want something softer, go back in time with their lenses and throw that on.
Well, that seems like the perfect time to drop a little plug in here. Like it does have an SL system rebate going on until the end of the month. So I don't know if I have the radio voice to do an act now, but go act now. Check out this system. If you guys are in the tri-state area, get your hands on a Leica system at B&H. Wherever you are, go in if they have Leica cameras available, because there is something to just the tactile nature of it. And like you said, it's a storied brand. There's a lot of history behind the brand. And some people are going to say, well, it doesn't matter, but I think it does. It's because it's ultimately about why do we do this? Like what makes you want to go out and capture everything you're living, what you're seeing. And you want, I think the most important thing about a camera, right, is do you want to use it? Is it something that you are comfortable with? It's like no different than a pair of sneakers, a fitted hat, a favorite hoodie you have, right?
Yeah, it's all inspiration, whether, you know, your phone, camera on your phone, Polaroid, Leica. It's all about whatever you pick up. If it inspires you to make photographs, that's cool, right? And it's not necessarily about a prestige or like, look at me with this kind of gear. You know, to some people it can be, but I think it's just, that's so absent from for myself, the point of like using those systems. It's not about like, hey, look how expensive all this stuff is. It's about like, this is just tools that like I like using that inspire me, and I feel great using these cameras and these lenses to make the photographs that I make.
Now, what's your biggest inspiration, man? Is it a person? Is it a thing? Is it not even photography related? Where do you draw from?
I mean, a lot of art stuff. You know, I'm gonna shout out another amazing person who's been using Leica cameras for years, right? So it's like Ralph Gibson. Like anyone who talks to me knows like he's like up there as one of the people that I just find like very fascinating. I think his work is broad, you know, and again, like he shoots still life, he would shoot people. And I think when you realize that photography, I feel like a lot of people, they approach photography as a documentative process. Like I need to have something happening in front of me to like document, to make the photograph. And I always loved like realizing the idea that like you can do that, but then you could also have fun with some random shadow or some colors or make something your own. And like that to me is like very, that just really woke me up. Like, oh, like I don't need a big moment that it's like, oh, like I can literally interpret, you know, a shadow falling on a street sign and make something of that and have fun, right? Because that's really your eye. It's like if you can take a mundane thing and make it interesting, then that's it's great on so many levels, but it's just like it's really you. It's like you're finding yourself as a photographer and as an eye. So again, it's you take that now when you shoot with a person, you're not going to be very general about it, right? Like you might incorporate use of light and shadow and background. So you start building on all these like layers. So that's one big thing. And then it's just, I think it's fun, like have fun with photography. Like I love black and white. That's one of my favorite mediums to work in, but I will take a break and shoot color and just learn to see in color, learn how I can resonate with things in color. So I think key word is just always have fun and don't ever lose that.
Mm-hmm. So what are you looking at when you're, and is it different? I want to know if it's different when you're shooting in color versus black and white. Are you looking at light? Are you looking at shapes, compositions?
Composition is always one. Like I primarily will use like a 50 millimeter. That's like always my go-to. A couple other lenses I'll use will be like a 90, maybe a 28, maybe a 135. So it's really what the lens is bringing into the photograph, like how it's helping me interpret things. Shapes and everything always, even in color, like that remains important to me. And sometimes it's just maybe there's nothing more than the color, and you're just kind of like shooting that, right? And there's like that famous Gary Winogrand phrase was like, I photograph a thing to see what it looks like photographed. And I think that's totally important to like just make a picture of something and go home and hopefully you print it out and you can just like look at the print and like really resonate with like what it is. Yeah, and it's just like color palettes. Like you find palettes that work well together. And half the time it's really just inspiration. Like if you have your camera, something that pulls you to it, whether it's going to be a good photo or not, you just try it. Like I'm just going to try to shoot this and see how it looks and go from there. Because then you look at something, right? You see it and you're like, oh, like let me try to make more photos like this to build the body of work out. So I think the inspiration just comes from what I'm seeing, like what I have on me, and just having fun.
Is there a tangible goal when you talk about like building the body of workout, and even thinking back to like when you first got started? Were you just like, this is cool, I just want to keep doing it, or was there like a goal in mind?
I think the goal in mind, like, so I started when I was 22. I think by the time I was 29, 30 is when I realized this was like a second wind of a passion, like what skateboarding was to me as a teenager. So my whole mentality at the time was like, oh, like this thing makes me happy. I just want to do this as much as I can. Like, I had started out shooting film, was really open to digital when it came. So it was like, I was primarily shooting digital, and like that just allowed me to like photograph everything and anything and see what I like. So I'd always try a little bit of everything as I was shooting. And I just kind of kept going. I wasn't totally thinking about, like, oh, this is a body work, because my mind wasn't there. This was like a very exciting time with like Tumblr, Instagram, social media. So this was like output. Like this was just like, let's just have some fun and shoot and share these images and like keep going. Like it was really rapid fire, like have fun, shoot everything, and just massively output what you felt was good.
It's like back to like the early days of Instagram. Everyone had a Canon 5D Mark II and was shooting bandos.
I never shot the bandos. I went out with a couple of guys. That wasn't my thing per se. Like I would think at the time I was heavily focused on model and portraiture work. But I mean, I would, again, like if I had friends that were like, hey, we're gonna go shoot one. Okay, I'll go with you guys. But you know, there was at that time where it's like, you got to post every day and you got to do, you know, it's just like, it was a freaking machine that we all felt we had to like keep feeding in order to like succeed, you know? So, I mean, that was an interesting time, and that's great to like go through a time like that, because then you kind of scale back and say like, you know, it's such a crazy, these days, crazy, massive race now with TikTok and now with Instagram doing videos. And I'm just like, I see photographers who go out and I say they got to have a GoPro on them. So aside from trying to create photos, they got to document and film everything. And I'm just like, yo, God bless if you're like, in your 20s and you have the bandwidth to do that, because like I'm so like, I just want to like take my time and enjoy making photographs, but to think of like, how am I going to make a cool video out of this? Like afterwards, it's like, man, it's just the thought's overwhelming.
You don't have a TikTok?
I have an account, but I've never posted anything. Like when it first came out, it was like the dance thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's evolved. You see very interesting ways of information being shared, like whether it's news and everything. So maybe at one point I'll create something for it. But again, it's like, oh man, it's just a lot, because then it's like a commitment, right? If you do one thing, you kind of got to keep rolling with it.
Totally. Well, your work has evolved, man. I mean, when I first was exposed to your work, it's way different than what I see now. And it's funny because it's like most people don't make the transition across genres like you do. They might start with something or do a little bit of everything, but they kind of keep it close to home. And for you guys, we keep referencing this. Guys, if you're not familiar with Stefan's work, StefanVanasco.com, Stefan Vanasco on Instagram. Do a little Google search there. You'll find everything you need to know. But what you were shooting 10 or so years ago, most people
when I was going by Van Styles.
Van Styles, man. Come on, the Van Styles days. Most people aren't leaving that. They're not. What pushed you past going? Because I mean, let's be real, right? Most people are gonna be like, "Hey, I'm good where I'm at."
It was funny. A buddy of mine, Rock Fetch, who's a very talented photographer in his own right. I got to like finally meet up with him, like really develop a friendship with him, and he shoots a lot of amazing portraits and musicians, all this work. And we were talking, and he was just like kind of saying, it's like crazy that you not gave it up, but it's like that you abandoned that, because he was like, that name was such a thing. And like for me, I'm in my own world, my own bubble, so like he was just like, it was like that was such a thing, because I knew it was like that was a thing, that name and that brand. And I'm more than happy to share it. So for myself, this goes back to like boxing in and branding, right? As a photographer, like I loved photography as a whole. So it wasn't like, I just shot occasional photos here and there and I just did this one thing. Like I loved it as a whole, right? And so when it becomes a thing, when that name or whatever name you go by is just so embedded with one subject matter, it's a little bit depressing. Like that's, he's the guy who shoots women, he's the guy who shoots models. And it's like, that's one bit of it, but that's just what it was, right? So there's the success. And also my personal journey was, I lost my father, had a birth of my daughter. And it was also this idea of, let me lose this name and go by my real name. Like I'm investing so much love and so much everything into this art form that like, let me do that. Like, let me just shed that skin of who I was at the time and be this, right? And I mean, again, I'm going to shout this out because she was a big advocate and helped me push through it, was Kiran from Leica Camera USA marketing. Like I remember the time I was contemplating this change, and she's like, we want to use this photograph to promote something. Like, what do you want to go build as? And had a conversation with her, and she just gave me this positive reinforcement of like I suggest you should probably change it. Because that's also the thing, right? Have this following on social media. Companies and brands want to obviously, or to some degree, want to mess with me because of that. And like she gave me this responding encouragement of like, go change. If you lose followers, you lose followers. Like we're still here. Like we're still, we believe in what your art is and what you're doing. And that to this day remains so impactful and so important to me is growth. I think evolution is very important, not only as artists, but as humans and just people. Like who you are at 20 and who you are at 30 are just so massively different, right? That it's like, that's part of it. And so like changing the name, it's weird. I felt like this liberation of like freedom. Like now, okay, I'm going to post what I want. This is like a new chapter in what I'm doing. And that's it. And again, it goes back to like, whoever wants to ride with me or, see this through, cool, come along. If you were just like, I just want to see photos of girls from this name, then sorry, like that is kind of on. And I think like the idea is to kind of like, for myself, show like you can evolve and you can change and it's good. And also other people who may feel stuck. Because I've so many people that I met would be like, oh, I've shot this one thing. I can't post it because it's not on brand with me. You know, they get so concerned about branding that I think it almost holds them back and hurts them. You know, then a good friend of mine, Evidence, like he does music, and we would have these great conversations about growth and all this stuff. And he put me on to a very famous jazz musician, James Matume, who did this Red Bull Music Academy. And this was a man who like did all genres of music, from like Miles Davis to writing his own pop hits to scoring New York Undercover. And he made this amazing reference to, you got to recognize when it's time to like cross a bridge and burn it. So his thing was, if I pick up my guitar, my instrument, and I play the same riff I've been playing for the past 10 years, it's time to move on. Like why are you doing the same thing over and over and over? Like, he's like, burn that bridge and do something new and have some fun with it. And that was very inspiring to me as well. Cause it's like, yeah, like why not as a creative or as an artist? Like, why can't you shed something and move on? Like, you should have that freedom and not be afraid. Cause if I was thinking about this recently, that if you're a photographer, you're an artist, and you're afraid of taking chances, like this shit probably isn't for you. Like whether it's sharing new work or sharing something, right? Because it's like, it's easy to kind of do the same old stuff that you felt you found success with, right? But to broaden out and do something new truly because you want to do it, that's one of the most scary and intimidating things you'll ever experience. But like, you got to have that skin, because again, you want to have a gallery. Not everyone's going to love all your photographs. You're going to have a critique of, it's the work was so-and-so. You know, but that's okay. You got to push through that and keep going.
That's awesome, man. Especially because I think once you hit a certain level and you get this, you know, the followers, you get the notoriety, your name is out there. It's so much harder for people to change and to break that mold, especially go in a direction that's different from the direction that gave them their name. So that's incredibly inspiring to probably not just me, but a lot of people out there listening. Now, you mentioned Evidence. And it's funny you mentioned him, because I really did want to ask you about this. I've been a fan of his music going back old Dilated People's days, the late 90s. And he's an amazing photographer. Yeah. So seeing that you directed, you know, these videos for Evidence, I want to know what the process is like when you're working with somebody who clearly he has a great eye. He has just his visual. He's everything down on the visual end. What is it like working with him, coming together? You guys both in your own right are fantastic eyes. How well did you work to kind of come on a cohesive vision together on these videos?
It was really good. And I attribute to him pushing me to do videos, right? So like, he was working on, you know, his new album at the time. And he was just like, hey, like, I see this black and white work you're doing. Like, put those together, make a move, and you got a video. Like, let's make a video. And so we finally did it, and it was easy with him. One, same thing, I'm a fan of his music. I'm a fan of him as a human, as a person. So that's the biggest thing, right? Like, I couldn't make a music video for someone's music that I didn't like or I wasn't into. And I think he just understood. We understood each other, right? Like, I want to make something that he's got his stamp on, he's proud of, and we work together. Like, it's not like, here's my vision, do what I say, or vice versa. Like, we completely come together between the editing, between the shooting, like, let's try this, let's try that. And him being a photographer, understanding a bunch of stuff as well when it comes to video. So it's just been fun. And it's kind of been like, as long as we're having fun with it, let's keep doing it and moving at our pace. So it's like, you know, I've got to be a part of making 2 album covers for him, album art, doing videos. So it's just been fun. And it's just kind of like exciting when, again, it's like a true collaboration between 2 creatives to make something.
Mm-hmm. What comes first? Is it something where do you already, you know, are you listening to music and you're like, oh, I would love to direct a video to this song? Or is it something where Ev might come to you and be like, hey, I have this track here. Think about.
I mean, there's a lot of times I hear the song, I'm like, oh, like this beat, like I want to, and I don't always get the song that I'm like, oh, I want to do this one. Mm-hmm. But it just depends on his release schedule. Like, he'll say, like, I want to put this song out first, this song, this song, this song. We come together, let's see if we can create a treatment, you know, and we'll go into a treatment idea. But then sometimes, like I was explaining to you earlier, I like working on the, just on the fly, where like you're out and wherever the setting is and you just, okay, over there, let's go over there and shoot that. Let's go over there and shoot that, which it's very loose, and it's very hard for some people even to evidence sometimes. Like he's comes from a structured background at times with music videos in the process where he wants to know like what it is, and we've tried that, and sometimes it's worked, and sometimes it's like we just abandoned that and went somewhere else, and we got a good end result. Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously the sound of the song is inspiring, but it's also understanding like his plan and his idea for what he wants to come out first and last.
Is that something you think you're going to stick with, doing more video?
I'm open to doing it, but it's really got to be, do I like your music? Do I like you as a person? Like, can we understand this thing? Because I mean, even with photography, right? Like I've worked on projects where or been asked to work on projects where it's like, here's our mood board. We want shots that look like this. And if I'm not into it, like I'm happy to decline, because it's like, oh, you don't need me. You just need someone that comprehends photography enough to do those settings and push the button. And
I love that, dude.
And it's kind of like, that's not exciting to me. And, yeah, you might miss out on money. Yeah, you might miss out on certain things, but it's like, is it fulfilling? And like, what I've tried to remain with photography throughout all this time is recognizing it as a passion and like a genuine love and a genuine sense of fulfillment, that like I can go out by myself, make photos, and I just feel great doing it. It's a very precious feeling that needs to be protected and nurtured. And I think a lot of people, I want to quit my job and I want to be a photographer. And I warn them, I'm like, if you could do your day job and do photography for the time being, do that, because that day job allows you to be creatively free in your photographs and develop however you want to develop with it, right? But the moment you quit the day job and now you're going to take this thing that you say you love, and I hate to use this analogy, but now you're going to pimp this thing out to everyone who wants to pay for it, it's going to kill it. Because you're going to have to at some point take the job that you don't want to do and the thing that you completely hate.
And you got the pressure of paying your bills now. And if you can't do it doing what you love, then how are you better off?
Drain it. It's going to completely drain it. So, and I think that's important, where it's like, you got to really look at like, and there's no disrespect. If you want to hustle your photography to make money, I had this conversation with a friend the other day. It's like, there's headshots that need to be done. There's e-commerce that needs to be done. There's weddings. There's a lot of outlets. You could just purely hustle it and make your money. But I think if you recognize something like photography in your life and it is special to you, like don't just exploit it. Take your time with it and really nurture it. Because that quote from that movie Nick Cage just did Pig, where he has this like line. He says, "We don't get a lot of things in life that like we really love." Like that hit hard, because that's a real thing.
So there's gonna be no Stefan Vanasco wedding photography anytime soon.
I've never shot weddings. I'd be open to it.
You would do it? I would
be open to it, but it would have to be like, and I get it, it's such an important day for a lot of people when they get the wedding, but it's like, if you like my photography and you like how I shoot, and you're just like, run free, do what you want to do, great. If you come up here with like a shot list, and it's like, you don't need me. You just need someone who's gonna follow your shot list. Like, so that'd be the takeaway. It's like,
I gotta admit, dude, I'd be pretty curious to see how you tackled a wedding. So if there's anybody out there that comes across this is watching or listening, make it happen in the future. It'd be pretty interesting to see your take on a little bit of aerial, a little bit of Candice.
Well, I mean, it's a very intimate day. You're invited into like two people and family, and it's an intimate moment. And it's like, just to have the opportunity to do that as best you can is interesting. Like, even to this day, if I shoot with anybody, portraits are, I put pressure on myself, because like, I want to make sure that they feel good or they feel happy about what we just made, so that would be an internal pressure as well. As like, I'm going to do my best to document this day in a way that, hopefully there's like a few photographs and they're just like, wow, like this, I feel like this is me in this photograph on this day, and it's an honest moment.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about a book, man? I know you're big into printing your work. You're a huge fan and thinks everybody should print. I totally agree. Are you working on a book? Is there anything out there?
I have concepts for a book. I think it feels like some of the earlier work that I was doing now might be ready for something, because photos are like stocks, where it's kind of like you could put something out like 6 months later from when you shot it. But I think if you're able to like sit on it for some time and then you re-put it out, it hits different, And obviously I have various bodies of work, so I'm getting pulled mentally. I'm getting pulled in different directions, which is a bit much at sometimes. But ideally, hopefully the next year or two, I would like to put something out and get that ball rolling. Cause I think once I get the first one done, the process I'll comprehend it much more. And then it's like, it'll be okay, now I can do this and now I can do this and start sharing the work like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, looking at your work, it's like tailor made to be seen, held
Mhm,
in book fashion, not just prints. I mean, prints are great, but there's just something about having that body of work there
mhm.
that just can't replicate it. Um,
No, it's, and I'm like, again, like printing books, like I'm a huge fan of it. And I really think like after learning this and understanding like printing your work and truly looking at books, because I think a lot of people when they make photo books, it's like one cool photo here, one cool photo there. And it's like you could run that, but I think it's about understanding your work and like what those two images together can speak or what they can do with each other. So
totally. We already had one person joining us on Vimeo said, "Shoot my wedding, please." There we go, man. Stefan's gonna be blocking me. He's gonna be like, "Dude, all these randos out here asking me to come do their wedding now." But no, I think it'd be super interesting. They also said book, 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 so I'm not the only one. What?
I've been asked about it again. It's just like design layout. There's a lot of like things for a proper book. Like I think a lot of people, if I'm not mistaken, there's a lot of photographers who get books made and they kind of just like ship stuff off to like a third party printer. And it's like I would have to be, by nature, my personality, I would have to be so involved. I want to like, what's the texture of the cover going to feel like? How is the paper inside going to feel like? What is the side? Like all these different things. It's like I would have to like go through like draft one, draft two, and like see how it goes. But I think hopefully when I do get around to doing it, I do it right and I do something that people, hopefully in the end will enjoy.
I mean, that's what's made you, not just your work, but your brand altogether. You're so, how do I say this? I don't want to say guarded, but like you're respective of like, look, I'm all I got. If I'm not watching out for me and for how people are taking me and how I'm branded and this and that, I feel like you do such a great job of not putting out too much, putting out just enough, putting out your best work, staying true to who you are. And that's kind of been backed up by everything you've been saying so far, is that you're not really swayed by what the person down the street or the person online is doing. If it's not for you, it's not for you.
Well, I mean, going back to the earlier notion, right? So it's like when I made that name change, and like again, a lot of people would be like, oh my God, you had like, I think at the time I had like maybe like close to like 800,000 followers. This was like 2017 when I changed this. So it's like within 5 years I've lost like 400,000 followers. And again, it's like just that core audience, because it's like, okay, well, what if I got 800,000? Now I need 801,000. It's like it's an endless cycle count, And I mean, I had a friend of mine send me like his TikTok profile, and I was just like, he's like, look, I have 1 million followers, and like that didn't really do much for me, like.
But you're
I'm
not
saying,
driven
like,
by it.
and not, yeah, it's just like I've been there. I personally have went through my own experience with all of that, like followers and X, Y, and Z. And it's like, man, like the freedom of being able to do what you want to do, how you want to do it, and not feel like I have to do this for my audience. Like I'll take being like lesser known, but the work that I'm doing is connected to me. It speaks to me that I'm not trying to like, what does my audience want from me next? Because then like once you go down that rabbit hole, it's like it's just endless.
You're not doing it for you at that point. You're doing it for people who really have no stake in your work.
Yeah, and you just can't be afraid of, I guess, being yourself and doing it for yourself. So that's been my experience and understanding, is that like, hey, look, like there's a lot of great photographers out there, and a lot of them, have their YouTube channels and share all this stuff. And for me, it's like bandwidth. It's like I just don't know if I could do all that well. Like I don't want to do something that's like, if it's not going to be authentic and 100% that I could really get into it, I won't do it. Not to say that I never will, but right now, like I'm having a lot of joy in making my photos and taking my time and sharing the work versus like, 8-10 years ago, rapid fire Instagram, you got to post at 10, you got to post at 1, you got to post at 6. And now I need another 3 photos for the next day that are just as great. And it's just like, stop the music, stop everything. Like I'm going to share what I share. Some of it will be, hey, I'm trying something new. Some of it will be like, oh, I personally feel this is a great photo I want to share. And again, it's just for, the audience who like can appreciate that realism versus like, to always be the smiling face, like, hey, how's it going, everyone? Like, I
That's
couldn't
not
do that.
you.
it's a facade that I couldn't hold up.
No, totally. And I think that's what it comes through in your work. It's very natural and you're not open to, but you have various styles, but it's all still recognizable as your work, which I think that's a big thing. When I look at an artist's work, I want to know, like, when you do post something, I know it's yours without looking at a name. And I think that's a great attribute right there, is having your work to the point where it's recognizable and it's not trendy. It's not, you know, off-putting. You know, it's solid. And I think that's a great place to be. So many people I feel like they are searching for the wrong things. And I'm not going to say that anybody wanting insta fame or, oh, I want to shoot celebrities and I want to do this, it's not all it's cracked up to be, right?
It's not. I mean, I had a guy that I know was a photographer for, he's still a photographer, I think, for a very famous rapper slash label owner. Like, he came to me and he's like, I'm trying to branch out, and like, because obviously anyone who shoots celebrities, this goes back into the boxing and branding, right? Like, you're so-and-so's photographer. Like, you're not you're not a photographer, you're so-and-so's photographer. Like, that's what everyone will introduce you as. That's what everyone will refer to you as. So the moment you step away from being that person's photographer, now you really got to stand on your own. And I was telling him, I was like, he's like, I want to do like kind of like lifestyle product, like this and that. I said, like, my advice to you is like, don't, because he has a lot of connections to famous people. So I would say, don't use anyone famous. Go find some unknown people, make the photographs. Because if you make the photographs with unknowns, then it's really you. It's not like, oh, he just got so-and-so's son or so-and-so from this to wear these headphones or do this. And then it's like, you're still riding on that thing of like the branding and boxing you put yourself in.
Totally.
So, I think there's something to that, where it's like, yeah, you can get the attention, you get the fame, but like, trust me, I've seen a lot of people get boxed in and they don't ever make it out. And they're just like, this is me. And again, to me, photography is so vast and so open that the idea of limiting your creativity to one type of thing, like, I don't want to be 80 and look back and say, wow, I made a lot of the same type of photographs.
Mm-hmm. Now, what haven't you done? Is there anything that's on your radar that you?
I mean, weddings. Weddings, like, I don't know, like, for example, I'm gonna go to Long Beach this weekend. There's like a Formula One drift race going on. A guy who's collected some pieces of my work, I think he works with them, so he extended an invite, so I got a press pass. I've never shot car racing.
Awesome.
So I'm gonna try my hand at that. And again, it's just always like, go in with a smile on my face, because like, when you go into a new subject matter, it's like you're learning all over again.
What's your approach to it? Are you looking at, so like going into this race, are you looking at professional, race photography? Are you just going in like, you know what, like everything else, I'm going to take it on the fly and do it my way?
I think that's the beauty when we're going back to like self-taught teachers. That's the beauty of going into something so blind, right? Like, there are no rules. But, so it's like, there's a lot of formal rules in every type of photography. Like, the people who've been doing it for so long, you don't do that, you do this. You don't do that, you do this. But when you go in, you're like a child's mind. It's like, I don't know what the rules are. So I'm free to do what I want to do. And it may be wrong, it may be right, but I'm learning my own process of doing so. So I think that's the beauty of like every new subject matter. Like, even again, I needed a break from like the protests and all the demonstrations from last year and the year before, that the Echo Park Lake has these like lotus farms that like bloom in it. And I was walking my dog over there one day and I was just like, wow, like, these are flowers. I've never shot flowers. Let me go shoot. And so I was just like, take out like my SL2S or the SL2. I'd bring out my film bodies, the R8, my MPs, and I would just like shoot and learn and look at the photographs. And I had a great compliment from someone that was just like, what I liked about those photos, that like, most people, they shoot flowers, they bring them in a studio and they still life and do it, but it's all controlled studio. You're just going out in the daylight and just making them feel different. Right. So again, like, I'm not a flower photographer in that regard. So that was maybe my, naivete of just like, let me just try this and see what works. And again, I think for any creative, it's like, try something new and you don't have to research how do you do it. Maybe try the first few times of, let me just see what I can do here. And if it doesn't work, then you can go to find a book or Google or whatever it is.
I like that approach. We had somebody asking, what's your favorite film and digital setup that you use currently?
I would probably say if it's a film setup, it's my Leica MP with a 50 millimeter APO Summicron. Like that lens, like never comes off. Like that's my favorite lens. If I'm shooting digitally, I've been a fan of the SL system. Just I love that you can run with the autofocus lenses that they have. So it's like you can really take full advantage of like that digital feature. Same thing, or throwing, my M lenses on that body and working it with it like that.
And there was a quick follow up. Do you prefer one or the other, film versus digital?
No, I bounce back and forth. Like I'll be super inspired by film and go shoot film. And then, okay, like I don't feel like, driving to a lab. I don't feel like loading the film or whatever it may be. So it's like, I have, an M10 monochrome. And again, like as mentioned, I have the SL system. So it's like, I'll shoot that. Cause I think that's like the fun part is like a great photograph is a great photograph digitally or made on film. I think it's all preference to the user, but I also think the audience or whoever's viewing the picture, if they can understand your translation of what you saw in your photograph, like that's the biggest connection. That's really what matters at the end. I think if it's there, it's there and they get it. Like no one's ever said, oh, I don't want to buy a print because it's digital or I only buy stuff because it's film. Like there are probably hardcore collectors out there, but I think in the idea of sharing your work, people they just want to understand like what you're seeing and what you're doing.
Totally. Well, I think one of the cool things you were talking about earlier in the green room was how the preference to sometimes when you have walls up when you go into a shoot, you have, okay, a shot list, you have this, and all these things are just walls to your creativity. And you kind of prefer to go in with a blank canvas and sometimes often even working with somebody who's not as experienced in front of the camera because them in and of themselves is a blank canvas as a model. They don't have this preconceived notion of like, well, I need to pose like this, or I need to do this. So that opens up your creativity, right? I mean, you're going into a shoot and you're kind of working with, we're just going to see where we're going to go. Is there any preparation that you do beforehand? Is there something you always do that has to be done that you can't work on the fly?
I mean, that's just gear prep. If you're shooting, digital, get your batteries charged, get your cards ready. If you're going to shoot film, bring the film stocks you want to do, bring the right lenses you want to use. Other than that, I mean, it's just pure attentiveness to the setting, to the environment. If you're working with people, being attentive to their responses and their reactions and not disregarding what they may be thinking or feeling, because you can do a photograph, you're trying to shoot portraits, if they're just like, they're mentally not there, you're not going to get the best pictures. If they're uncomfortable or they're just not feeling what's going on, like you got to learn how to change that. So it's a bit of that people kind of skill that you can't prepare for, but you got to be willing to adjust on the fly for that kind of stuff.
How do you work out of that? Like say you walk in and somebody's just like, you don't know if like, all right, if I talk and try to get them loose, they're just getting pissed off at me, or is like, how do you handle tough situations?
Two things. If regards to portraiture, one, it's like, let them just kind of like have a conversation, be a fly on the wall, like just try to get a subtle way to make the photograph. That way they're not posing. It's like more honest of them. And like, honestly, I feel like activities, like as silly as it may sound, right? Like, okay, like, oh, if you enjoy like smoking weed, like you want to smoke a joint really quick before we shoot. It's like, if they have an activity, they're doing something, they're preoccupied. They may not be as hyper focal of like, what are you doing? Right. So it's just like, they're just in their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like kind of like important too. It's like, what relaxes you? Like, what do you want to do? So it's like listening to music, you just want to dance around, like whatever it is, like find something they just genuinely like doing. And if you let them do that first, that sheds something down. And then it's just like, okay, now it's like this wall just maybe came halfway down or it's completely gone now. So
do you ever have like a certain vibe you want to go for based on who it is or what you're shooting for?
Yeah. And again, that's on the fly interpretation. And that's what I'll say is like a mixture of, you go out and shoot street, like, unless you know what you're going for, like you kind of got to be attentive to the streets and like what they're going to show you. Same thing can be said when shooting portraitures of people. You gotta like, you can go into it, but it's like they might be energetic and on top of it that day and they're just exerting. You got to go with that. If they're kind of reserved back, you got to like figure out how to get the most out of that. So again, it's like going back to when you try shooting different things, you could retake these moments. Okay, I'm gonna try this now and try this and get different work versus like, oh, this is how you shoot a portrait, this is how you do it. You might not get that same result.
I love that. So it's like you're staying so in the moment that you're not focused on, I mean, really all the other stuff, like if you're too focused on lighting, if you're too focused on settings, on posing and this and that, I guess it can take you out of the moment and you produce work that's less emotional, more clinical.
Yeah, well, and again, this goes back to like what James Matume says in his Red Bull talk, even evidence, like he's had his way. And he even said, I have like my routine. And he was pretty amazed by how like some of the younger rappers like will just like go out, shoot a video and put it out. Like there's no like big thing. And he was like, I want to try that. Like, let's go, come to my place, let's shoot a video, let's just put it out. And the track that he did was Unlearning, which it was about this idea, right? Like if you have your flow and you have your formula and you've done enough times and you've proven that it works and it's this whole thing, stop. Whatever you're doing, if you start to, this is what I always do, stop. Go back, go this way, go that way, try different things. And that's very inspiring, I think, with photography, even where it's like, you can have your routine, but it's like, how boring is that routine? Where it's like, my light gets set here and I do this here and my photographs all look relatively the same, like technically. So that's honest the whole thing. If your light's not working that day, make it work. Like, how are you going to make the photograph? So I think there's something to be said about unlearning whatever process you've already established doing, because that makes it kind of fun now, where it's like you always shoot with a 35, try shooting with a 75. You know, like if you're just flipping, try reverse and see what you get, because you're going to get a different type of feeling in your work.
Totally. Dude, this was an eye-opening hour. I gotta say, it really takes your work to another level to hear you talk about your process and how you go about this stuff. Because it really is, as much as we put out there online, nobody's really opening up and talking about the process behind their work. It's kind of just like, oh, here's a pretty picture. Oh, here's
Well,
I
think the process is, everyone has their process, but I think it's also okay to every now and then nudge someone on their process or yourself. Like, if I tried everything? Am I not trying everything? Can I do something different? And I think that's important. And I think it's like, even with my friends, like whether it's to me or whether it's me to them, it's like, well, what if you did this? Like, what if you tried this? And it's like, that's the creative gumbo of like just throwing stuff together. Like, what do you get that comes out that maybe might make your stuff a little bit different feeling than like what it has been or what, you know, you're inspired by.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like the people close to you, because you have status, right? You've made it, and in everyone else's mind, it's like, oh, he's there. He doesn't need to do anything else. Do you find that people are like apprehensive to be like, hey, well, maybe you should do this, or I'd love to see
Oh,
this?
I mean, evidence was like that, dude, like do video, like do this, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, there's people that will share stuff with me. I mean, maybe not often enough, and definition of making it is variable for sure. I mean, like, again, like I am in my own bubble, so I don't know what people's perception of me like that are, but I mean, I'm open to it. Like, if you see something, show me, like, what do you think I should try? Like, you know, it's all about like, oh, an outside eye, right? Like, have you ever thought about doing this? So I don't know, it's intriguing. Even someone the other day I was walking with was like, have you ever done like big commercial work? And I'm like, not really, but I would be open to it. Like, you know, so there's always room for growth.
Mhm. Now, I would be remiss if I let you go after this hour of talking to you. Want to talk about Super Bowl imagery
Yeah.
and working on the Super Bowls. I mean, this year especially was finally a great game. It's like you get one out of every 4 Super Bowls is actually a good game to watch. But the halftime show was incredible. It was something that it was in LA. You had that whole Compton set. It was super meaningful to a lot of people, especially people that grew up in the 90s. It was like a trip back in time. Can you talk about the imagery that you provided for the Super Bowl and just kind of take us through, was that the first time you've worked on the Super Bowl? What was it like to put together your images?
Yeah, it was the first time working on any scope for the Super Bowl. The project came through the pilot that I would fly with. Pretty much like he just got hit up like, hey, they need someone to photograph this. And, I do pretty good with aerial photography. I got on a call with Ez Devlin, who was a set designer, going through everything. They were like, we're trying to make this look. So the concept was aerial look down imagery of just the city of Compton. They were trying to use Google Earth images that were made in the daytime, and they were trying to process them and look like nighttime, and it just wasn't happening. And it was literally like, I think like a conference call Monday, by like Wednesday, like go up and shoot, like go get it done. And And so there was like gear comes into mind, right? So it's like, well, I can do SL2S, which is this much megapixel, but it's great at low light. Or the Leica store in Los Angeles was kind enough to let me borrow the S3, which I did a couple weeks prior. Just I wanted to test it out. I was like, or I could go with this one that's way more megapixels. And they were like, no, like more megapixels. Like they had a specific DPI of the print that they were going to use and what the cars had to be sized, like all this different stuff. So that was like the first night, like, we're going to try to get it done at night because it was like no daytime, start at dusk and shoot. And then it's like, how do you photograph a whole city like that? You know, so it was like, do you left to right frame, shoot, move the helicopter over, left to right frame, shoot. And the pilot was like, that's going to take forever. We're going to like pretty much start at one side of town, pick a horizon. We're going to fly, I'm going to fly very slow and smooth and just shoot. So it's like literally like every 3 to 5 seconds because they're like, we're going to stitch it all together. So it was just like shoot, like physically myself, like holding the camera out of the helicopter, shooting, get to the other end of town, fly back and just, you know, like just go across like that.
How long were you guys up there?
We thought we were very advantageous and thought we were going to get it done in one night. We got from like maybe 6 hours, so like 6 to midnight. And it was just like, we got halfway done.
Damn.
We've got to go up tomorrow night. Like they were hoping we would get it done in one night. Like it's just impossible because him as a pilot physically, you know, like his attention and what he's doing. Like, so imagine now it's like just tedious like that. So we got it done in 2 nights and they was like, just send us the deliverables. Like you don't have to process, you don't have to do color correction. But the first night I was so nervous, like, is this going to work? So I was sending them like JPEGs, like from the airport, like, will this work? And they were like, yes, this is going to work. Like, this is it. Like, this is good. So, you know, the coloring, rendering, like all that kind of stuff, it was crazy. Because when they sent me the mock-up design of what it was going to be, I got a better scope of like, oh, okay, like this is going to be intense because I'm familiar with Ez's work and she's done amazing projects across the board. So I was like, oh, she's not going to mess around. Like, this is going to be something really cool.
And everybody who's ever tried to stitch a simple panoramic view together and gotten the Photoshop message like that it can't be done because you're missing a picture here.
And that's why the design team was like, give us more photos and less. So that's why in my head it was like, at the speed we're going, it's like usually like every 3 or 5 seconds shoot a frame, because I took the S3, I had the 30mm S lens on it, so it was, you know, probably equivalent to like a 24, and just like it covered enough ground where it's like just there was enough pieces to do it. At the airport, as we were refueling, I stitched a group together really quick and it worked. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is going to work. Like, but then I was like, afterwards was notes, like here in this folder is from this street to this street. We're flying in this direction. Like, this is what it is. So I had to like give them all these detailed notes, because had I just sent them, here's all the photographs with no idea of what it is. Like, imagine trying to stitch all that together. Like, what are we looking at?
Oh, totally. I mean, you got to kind of have some sense of like, hey, this is the direction we're going.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just flying blind.
Yeah. We're flying, you know, we flew from east to west. You know, I'm facing south. We're shooting these streets. So it was, you know, the tedious work afterwards was like crazy.
That's awesome. Well, Stefan, I want to thank you again, man. We have one final question. We're not letting you off here without answering this question. Lens caps or no lens caps?
Mostly no lens caps. But I think I do with my Leica M lens, especially, I do put like the Leica UV filters on it just as a little sense of protection. Because sometimes I look, I'm like, oh, it got scratched. Oh, well, but you know.
You don't want that, Bill.
No, I mean, I just keep shooting, but it's like, you know, to kind of protect them for future. Yeah, you know.
Totally. All right, we'll put him right there in the middle for those of you that are out there keeping count of who doesn't use the lens caps and who does. But Stefan, I want to thank you again, man. This is just an awesome hour. Super easy talking to you. Very humble, very talented. And again, like I said, it's just great to get inside your head and see what's going on.
For sure, man. Thank you for having me. Thank B&H for having me. And, you know, really want to say a big thank you to Leica Camera for, you know, inviting me to come do this with you guys and being a sponsor of this. So it's great.
Definitely a huge thank you, yes, to Leica for sponsoring today's event. The entire team over there, wonderful to work with. Stefan, another thank you to you. That's all we got for now. Another rendition of the B&H virtual event space is in the books. Catch y'all next time.
See you guys. Thank you.